Welcome back to Halftime Report on CNBC TV18. Now, what we're seeing in the recent time, and we're going to shift focus on that, is going to be India's data center boom. Factors such as low power cost, telecom dominance, and then we have data driven by AI, the development there. So what are the advantages for data centers? Where is India in this? To discuss this and more, we're joined by Prateek Jawar, MD and Head of Infrastructure and Real Estate Investment Banking at Avendus Capital, as well as Ashish Rai, Group CEO of Orient Solutions as well. Ashish, as well as, Prateek, thank you so much for joining us on the show. This is a topic that, we've spoken in the last couple of years as well. But in the recent time, given the AI boom, power costs being cheaper, I've mentioned all of that. And these factors will lead to a better growth is what everyone's assuming. Ashish, let me start with you. For Orient Pro Solutions, or even as a sector, where are you all seeing yourself currently in this data center industry? How do you see yourself shaping up going forward, and what is the current revenue contribution that maybe comes in from this side?
Yeah, so look, it's a very important line for us, and we've talked about this before. I think we've been in the business for some time now. It's north of 15% of our revenue probably at the moment, something of that range. We don't declare the specific numbers publicly, so I won't get into that. Look, I think for us it's been a key demand driver. The business has grown at between 40 and 50% for the last 4 years. When we got into the business, I think it is, the demand runway is fairly long. India has always been under capacitized from a demand standpoint. So I think from data, for example, I think it's probably well known we generate almost 20% of global data demand, and the DC capacity is probably 3% or thereabouts, right? So I think there is a massive headroom to catch up on the demand. Plus, there is a lot of demand drivers in general in terms of, whether that's 5G, whether that's AI, that's payments volumes, the need for latency, and as you go into more AI inference, right? So there is a massive demand. We see the business growing fairly strongly over the next, I would say, 5-7 years. There is a significant investment coming in. The policy environment is good, and we've built out a very high quality business in terms of working with our strategic partners in building out capacity for them, right? So I think we see a pretty strong runway ahead.
You see a pretty strong runway ahead, Prateek. Ashish, actually one more follow-up to you. I just want to understand what would be the percent of growth now you expect to see, right? Industry is expecting around a 43% growth globally in terms of AI market. Do you think that would also lead to a similar boom coming in here in this sector? And are you open to more tie-ups? Because OpenAI is also talking about data centers here as well. So are you in touch with any global players? Are you looking at tie-ups now?
Yeah, so look, especially when it comes to AI compute, I think there's a lot of conversations, and depending on where it is, we got some global tie-ups as well, and they're sort of partnerships that we'll announce from time to time. It's like, I think as right now, if you look at AI compute specifically, there's probably 70-80% of the compute is still training workloads, right? But as sort of inference workloads increase, you will need a lot more capacity closer to the end user, which means you'll need to see a lot more capacity come on stream in India, which is actually probably, one of the largest bases of user bases around, right? I mean, for OpenAI or for anyone else for that matter, right? So I think there would be a significant demand for compute coming in if you're talking AI compute specifically, but even otherwise, given the under capacity, there is a lot of interest in global players coming in anyways.
Right. All right, Ashish, just hang in there. We'll invite Prateek as well, and we'll come to you in just a bit. But Prateek, the facts are all there for everyone to see. 2024, the capacity was 42 gigawatts. 2027 expected to be 70 gigawatts. By 2030, go to 100 gigawatts. India accounts for just 3% global data center capacity, while it owns or consumes 20% of the global mobile data. What investors would like to know from here on is, where will the returns come? If one has to play the data center capacity or the data center business, the returns would be maximum where? At the operator level, at the high-tech cooling level, the racks, the power systems providers. Which part of the value chain will a lot of this be captured in?
No, thank you. Let me come in. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
So the interesting part is, see, there's an ecosystem built out which is happening, right? India is frankly, in a percentage terms, we are around 3% as you're talking about the global data center capacity. But predominantly, almost 70% of the capacity today for data centers is in the US and China. The global capacities are catching up. From an India perspective, whatever we have built till now was for domestic demand by domestic players. There has been interest from global investors, global operators who want to kind of come in and set up capacities, which was being driven by local enterprise requirements, mostly driven by data sovereignty, which we've been talking about. But the bigger change which we are going to see now, and whatever projections which we are looking from an India perspective are going to be driven by the AI-led demand and how much of that workload is going to kind of shift to India. I think the point is that, as Ashish was rightly mentioning, that we have almost 20% of data generation or data consumption happening in this country today, whereas we have a capacity of around 3%. Most of our data is being stored outside India. So our first bit is like you have enough latent requirement which will kind of shift in, which will give an impetus to kind of put out that capacity from a developer operator perspective. You have to invest almost around 6-7 million for a gigawatt. 600 million goes for a gigawatt capacity, which kind of goes in. So the amount of capital which is required is going to be divided into three segments. The way, say, an IT services business got built over, say, 3 decades, there is a segment of real estate developers who went ahead and kind of built out cold and shell. There are operators who are building up capacities, which is almost 4x the capex which is required over and above the operators. And then obviously the operators and implementation partners or the IT services companies, which kind of comes in play. So from a money-making perspective, if you're talking about, there is going to be a huge amount of capacities which is going to get implemented. And we're talking about a growth in India, the requirement is going to be around, say, 25 billion just to kind of set out this capacity to meet the requirement which is being envisaged. Which is going to be driven by the AI-led demand. I'm talking about the real estate and implementation part of it. So the entire value chain is going to get created locally. We see that probably when it comes to kind of setting up data centers, it's going to be the global operators who have the relationship with hyperscalers, are the ones who will probably take up the lion's share of capacity built out. They have the probably access to the lowest cost of capital as well. So the data center capacity will be consolidated or concentrated with large developers, operators. However, the entire value chain play is going to get established locally. So when you're talking about the cooling solutions, the power solutions, which are going to kind of being given out, the equipment manufacturing. So all of this is going to get benefited out of this entire expansions which are being planned over next, say, or requirements which are coming over next, say, 10 years.
Pratik, good afternoon. What I also want to understand, now, while you're saying, most of India's data currently is also outside, right? So first, we'll meet our own domestic data point of view and get all our data back to India, and then for the global level. How much capacity, are we actually going in the right direction? Is this enough in terms of what the government is providing, or the capex story that you hear on ground? Is it enough, or much more is still required to actually reach at the global level or compete maybe with global countries like Singapore and Malaysia, which are ahead in terms of us?
Frankly, I think Singapore is not a right comparison. They are not competitive. Most of the Singapore's data is also stored outside Singapore. They're expensive. I think one of the key components which kind of makes a difference in data centers creation has been power requirement, and government is doing all their bit, including now obviously the taxation reforms which has come in place to kind of give a benefit to the developers to kind of come and set up data centers in India. There has been works which are happening on the infrastructure layout as well, which means providing data center parks, which is going to kind of make sure that you have the efficient supply of power, green power for the which is going to be available at a decent cost. So that it is the, I think, going to be the drivers which we are seeing going to make shift in India. Lot of large developers and data center operators are looking at India, are looking for opportunities to kind of build out in India. Hyperscalers still now have been kind of consuming or storing data in India basis the need and whatever is minimal required. I think that shift which is happening from the government to kind of bring the data sovereignty and kind of really store more data in India and locally in the local markets, I think that's going to give the boost for sure. Further, I think it will all depend on the economics and the way the quality of efficiency of the infrastructure which gets created. will drive out India as a preferred partner for maybe storing not only data for India, but maybe become one of the global centers for developers to kind of make it a place where they kind of store more data.
You've laid it out for us. Let's go back to Ashish and ask him. Ashish, from an Orion Pro solution standpoint, how much revenue comes in from data centers right now? How much do you expect it to go over the next 3 to 5 years? And where does that place you when it comes to peers?
Yeah, so look, we run one of the top sort of design and program management outfits out there. We work with strategic partners in terms of really designing, especially the complex data centers. I believe, we are one of the stronger players around. The business is meaningful for us. Something between 15% plus of the revenue now. Been growing at 40-50% for the last 5 years since we've been there. A lot of very strong strategic partnerships. We're getting into a number of international partnerships now in terms of really bringing both our IP as well as partners' IP into the game. So I think we'll be one of the strong contenders as the business grows overall. Really, there is space for a large number of players to exist within the ecosystem. I think there is a significant headroom for growth in the business, given just the sheer scale of investments that need to come in. And that's just to service Indian demand, right? So I know there is this conversation around India becoming the sort of center for the world. But I think at the moment, we are like so severely undercapacitized, and there is just a very strong policy push, localization push in terms of, both RBI, SEBI, etc. So as long as the local regulators are supportive, I think the domestic demand itself is fairly significant to drive growth for a fairly long time. And we intend to be one of the top players in this game in terms of helping our partners.
So this 15% goes where in the next 3 to 5 years?
Look, as a business, we've been growing at 30% plus overall anyways. We are one of the very few tech firms which have been growing at that rate. So I think the rest of the business will also keep on growing. I would not really give an overall percentage share, but I think it's been climbing up the last few years, and it will probably climb up a bit more.
Okay, Ashish as well as Prateek, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, explaining us where this global data center boom is actually going to go, where India is placed in this story as well right now. Thank you so much for joining us on the show and giving us more details on this front. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. Ajit Mishra of Religare Broking will join us with trading strategies after the break.